Hello, and welcome to Overlanders Then and Now. I'm your host, Jim King, here with your other host, Tom Bingle. How you doing, Banks?
Oh, good, Jimmy. Good.
Good.
Good. Everything's fine. The snow's gone up here in Boston and looks like spring has sprung, James.
Nice. Well, we're waiting for that in Connecticut a little bit. It's a little warmer today, but still kind of cold. But the sun's out, so it's a beautiful day. So, so we're going to do something a little bit different. We agreed that for the
Yeah.
next couple of videos, we would interview each other about what we did after that grand finale in Paris, where one or both of us got overserved, and then the next day we parted
Yeah.
ways. So you're up first. Let me ask you a couple of questions about that. Now, you wrote in the blog a nicely detailed description of where you went and everything, but I want to find out what was going through your head at
Oh,
various
yeah.
points in that particular journey. So let's start with the day that you left for Germany. Things were not, set in stone. What was going through your head as you made your way on the train back to Garmisch?
Jim, it was a risk, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, because didn't have, Jim, to be honest, I didn't have you as kind of a buddy to kind of bounce ideas off and to
Uh-huh.
share things and things of that nature. So, ooh, Jimmy, here we go. Bingle's out on his own. And
And he
just a
was,
little bit risky. And Doc, I remember, however, in Shaba, I said, what will happen will happen. If I get the job, I get the job.
right.
If I don't, fine, I'll use the Euro pass to go back to UK. That's what's meant to happen. So,
Excellent. Yeah, good. So you did get there and started looking for a job. Tell us about that. Was it difficult? What was
Jimmy,
going
no, it
on?
wasn't. Fascinated this employment center, the Arbeitsamt, and sure enough, Jim, got there, sat down. A gentleman was helping me. He's Alex, as I mentioned, wanted to practice his English, and he was so helpful. And Jim, sure enough, at noon they came and said, hotel dishwasher at the Hotel Sonnenbischof, and it's on the outskirts of town. So Jim, magic words. We all have magic words in our lives. That was some there,
Wow, that
and
was fast. Like the same
yeah, Jim,
day?
yeah. Yeah, it
Wow.
was fast. And Jim, Bavaria, Garmisch in Bavaria was kind of like the recreational area for the winter. Big skiing area. Matter of fact, we had the World Championships there of skiing. So
Yeah.
it was really quite something, Jim,
I
down there at
do
that time.
remember
They needed the
Banks.
help.
I remember when, before I went back to the States, I visited my brother in the Air Force, Rick, his wife Cheryl,
Yeah.
and the kids.
Hmm.
And you called there to tell me that you got this dishwashing job. And I
Yeah.
thought, damn it, I wonder if I've made the right decision. But in any event, I was glad to hear you found it. And tell us about that. So you were a dishwasher for,
Yes, Jim.
okay.
Yes. And Jimmy, what was great, it was simple. And I have to admit, after that first night, I slept so well. I thought, ooh, I really kind of accomplished something here. But Doc, a bed, sink, a desk, and a chair. That's all that I had. So I could write all the time and
Mhm.
reflect, a lot of introspection. And Doc, probably the most, well, I would say the greatest gift was to meet all these different people from the United Kingdom that worked there, but also from France, Romania, and we all worked together. And Jim, it was fun, and the work was simple, Doc. In other words, I would do it, and for some reason, that simple job I just loved, and it was
You
it
didn't
was
get
really
bored
wonderful.
or it wasn't boring?
No, no, Jim, I did not. Matter of
Oh,
fact,
okay.
I worked hard, so I became the chief dishwasher.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
All in all.
a first taste of success in the real world, huh?
Yes, Jim, yes, very much so. And a fellow dishwasher, Peter Cavanaugh
Yeah.
from England was there, and also this Daniel, a gentleman from France who was learning German, and then Ben, this guy Jim Ben Venlo again from Cleveland, and he was born
Oh,
there
really?
and born in Europe. And sorry, and he knew four languages like I knew English, so it was very good, nice people.
Wow. Excellent.
And what would I say, Jim? It was just I felt a lot of accomplishment, and it gave me some confidence, Doc. To be very honest with you. Plus, I was saving some money.
Yeah, that's
It
nice.
wasn't a
Yeah.
lot, but I was making money because the room and board was all paid for.
Well, it sounds like your sense of accomplishment wasn't so much the dishwashing, even though
Yeah, yeah,
climbed
right,
that
Jim.
climbed that kitchen ladder,
Yeah,
but maybe a sense of independence, or
yeah.
what do you think it was?
Yeah, I think so, Doc, and the ability of me to take care of myself, so
Okay.
to speak,
All right.
that confidence in that. And then, Jim, the other thing too was it enabled me to think a little bit again out of the box, to think that okay, we've been able to accomplish the very first thing with Europe for 2 to months of magic, and thought, ooh, maybe I might be able to do that again. And so
Well, you
that it,
did,
it was
right?
really confidence building. Yeah.
I mean, you did do it again. Well, I mean, actually, you continued, right? So
Yeah, Jim.
you and Peter hit the road. Talk about that.
Yes. Yes, it was unbelievable, Jim. Because oh, what would I say, Doc? We headed out, you ready? Hitchhiking. Because we didn't have that much money and it was
Really?
much cheaper than the trains or anything else. And
Wow.
so, Doc, the very first thing to Austria, but then I wanted to go through Yugoslavia. That was a communist country.
Hmm.
We kind of off limits in that sense, but it was very much far from it. And and the people were very friendly. And Jim, it was great to get that interaction, about the people and how they lived and how they viewed things. And
And
then Jim,
you were hitchhiking?
yeah, Jim hitchhiking and a bus sometimes in
Okay.
Yugoslavia when because we headed out over to the coast to Dubrovnik and Split,
Yeah.
and just plenty of jive.
Well,
And
that's
Jimmy, but the goal was Istanbul on that
yeah.
one.
Okay. I just wanted the thing with hitchhiking is, I guess because it was 1978,
Yes,
things
yeah,
were a bit different. I mean, in this, well, when we were in college, I used to hitchhike every now and then if I couldn't get a ride to and from
yeah,
Cleveland to South Bend.
yes.
Um, but I'm really surprised about hitchhiking in Europe. I mean, a lot of people spoke English back then, but that must have been a little
Yeah.
unnerving, or no, I guess not.
Well, Jim, it was fascinating. A couple elements, but even in Yugoslavia, I did have my American flag on my backpack,
Oh,
and I think what happened, Jim, is that it generated interest.
hmm.
People would stop and pick because they didn't. Again, another land, Doc, where they haven't met a lot of these Americans, and that they would, engage. And I had a smattering of German after 3 months and some French,
Hmm.
and English, and so we were able to communicate in that regard. And then
English
Jim,
too. You spoke English
uh,
too.
yeah, and Jimmy, what would I say? Then, but not there, but then later it was fascinating. Well, until when we get to the UK, but how we slept at night. So it was fascinating.
Well, I mean, cat's out of the bag. Tell
Well,
us.
here we go, Jim, because what we would do, once we got back up in, Germany and up in that area, hitchhiking, Doc, we'd find a farm nearby a town. And Jimmy, they obviously have a house and they'd have a quote unquote, a garden lawn area and
Uh-huh.
everything. And Jim, the American, would go up, knock on the door and ask them, oh, would you mind if we're backpacking, we're traveling through, could we put up our tent just for the night in your garden? And Jim, there wasn't a single time that, Doc, we did not, we had a refusal. It was
Oh,
unbelievable.
that
And
is unbelievable.
yeah, and
Huh.
Jimmy, one time I'll just do a little diversion, but in the UK, Jim couldn't believe it, did it, by all means, put up your tent, started to rain. And the man came out and said, put up your tent, come on inside and spend the night inside. So, Doc, we do it. Are you ready for this one, Jimmy? And after a Guinness, I find out that this man is the first cousin. He and his wife are first cousins to the provost, I believe, the provost at Notre Dame University in South Bend, Indiana, Father James Burchill.
Oh, fired.
And
Oh
so it
my
was
God.
quite
Yeah.
unbelievable connections that we encountered hitchhiking. And as I said, Jim, I'll never forget. Also in the UK, a lot of men had hitchhiked in their lives earlier, and they just felt, oh, here's somebody hitchhiking. We got to pick them up. We have to help them.
Yeah, the flag
So
on the backpack I always found
yeah,
interesting because,
yes,
you would see a lot of Australian flags, New Zealand,
okay,
UK, not too many American flags.
yeah.
And I think today, probably not as they wouldn't be as welcoming. But even back then, when we were in the Middle East and Asia, there
Yeah,
were
remember
parts
that?
where you would
Yeah,
never put an American flag on
yeah.
your
That's
backpack.
interesting, Jim.
So
Yeah, yeah,
but you were speaking of dangerous places,
yeah.
you were up in Northern Ireland, right? You and Peter
Oh,
eventually
Jim.
made your way up there.
Yes, we made it all the way up, and we had a choice. We could have kept going, and but we decided though to take the ferry across and dock. Unbelievable! This is during the time of the Troubles in
Right.
capital letters,
Hmm.
and dock. We go to Belfast, and sure enough, you get to Belfast. There was a British checkpoint, and I mentioned in the blog that there was an empty bag, and we all had to get off that bus. But the other main thing, Jim, is that I did the curiosity took Peter and myself to Shankill and the Falls Road. And Jim, I'll never forget, a Catholic lady, just we were talking
Yeah.
about it, and she mentioned about her 20-year-old son, and she highlighted a photo because we reminded her of her 20-year-old son. But anyhow, back then, Jimmy, he had joined the non-sectarian, not Catholic, not Protestant, not IRA, not Ulster Youth League, Jimmy, police department they were developing. And sure enough, Jim, he was murdered
Ooh.
right on his doorstep for that step to try to do this bridge to calm the troubles.
Oh my God.
So
That's awful.
yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks
Um,
for lifting the mood. Thanks.
yeah,
Sorry.
sorry, Jimmy. Sorry, Jimmy. Jimmy, and I'll never forget hitchhiking. We went back. It was fascinating once we got to London, and it was fun because once we got to England, we went and visited all the fellow employees, that we had met in
Great.
Garmisch from the UK. So it's great. But
Neat.
I had a great time, Jimmy, reuniting with Rick and Cheryl, your brother and sister-in-law, and then Kevin and Colin back in that idyllic village of Hilton. And
Yeah.
Jim, Rick and Cheryl were so helpful as far as giving guidance to what to see in
Hmm.
England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and Northern Ireland. It was really wonderful to see them.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting
so it's
because they pretty
yeah.
much kicked me out and sent me back to the States.
And
Just
Jimmy,
kidding.
one other final one that's very kind of heartwarming is my uncle, my mom's brother, was in the United States Air Force. I think at the same Alconbury base that I think maybe Rick was based in.
Yeah,
Whatever,
I think
30,
so.
30
Elkinberry.
years later, and my uncle met great people by the name of Weirs. That was Mr. Weir and Mrs. Weir, and sure enough, Jim, they were still alive. And I went and had a wonderful hospital night,
Oh, wow.
reminiscent about my uncle, and also Jimmy, too fascinating about the World War II and the cooperation of the Brits and the Yanks together.
Yeah.
Kind of fascinating
Yeah.
moment.
Another thing that has changed very recently. So let's
Yes.
talk about your return to the States and getting back to Toledo. Talk about that.
Jimmy, fascinating because Doc, what happened is that I flew into Boston and then approached it, and I'm gonna hitchhike over back to Toledo. But Doc, doing it, visiting people, and right away,
Okay.
three college Notre Dame roommates, or not roommates, friends came and helped us right away. One was Jay Williams from Duxbury, came picked me up. Drove me
Right.
to Connecticut to visit T.R. Paulding, our great friend. And then from there on to Danny Borelli in Rochester, New
Rochester.
York,
Yeah.
and then eventually to Cleveland, Jim, for you and Ben Van Willigen, and then Jim to Toledo.
I wasn't
Walked
there,
like
thanks.
Jim was fascinating. Like the last half mile, walking in the neighborhood that I grew up in. Past my grade school. Here's the guy with a beard and a backpack. Walking, and sure enough, Jim, it was an emotional coming back. The journey is ended, and sure enough, hugged my mom in front of the big sign that the little Aunt Bobby and Annie Mullen Coffin made, "Welcome home," up on the garage. And Jim, the journey was ended at that moment. So,
Well, that particular journey, yes, but
yes,
as
yeah,
we
yeah,
all
that's
know, that was nowhere near the end. So,
yeah.
all right, well, good. Any final thoughts? What really? that time from Paris to Toledo, what really stands out in your mind as a life lesson or what you might give advice for people who travel
Oh, Jimmy,
anywhere, you know?
just good begets good for one. But then, Jim, just the idea of trying to make the world smaller through expanding and traveling. And I found, Jimmy, that, going, like even not as far as you and I went and ventured, but, to Yugoslavia, down to Istanbul, then to Israel for that short visit, Doc. I was learning a whole bunch of different perspectives about this human existence. And Jim, I
Mhm.
think that was the thing to kind of help make the world smaller would be my
Right.
goal, and it was motivating enough. And Jim, fortunately, I felt safe enough in order to do that, even with the hitchhiking, and
Yeah, that's
I just
wonderful.
felt safe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. All right, good. Well, that's about all the time we have. So next time you can ask me. It's not going to be
Yo,
nearly as exciting, folks.
yes, that'd be great,
Didn't
Jim.
do much hitchhiking in Indiana, but anyway, we'll catch up next time then. And until then, cheers, everyone.
Cheerio, everyone.